Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the third and last day of ICN's Annual Conference 2024, organized by the Administrative Council of Economic Defense, CADE, and the International Competition Network, ICN, here in Sauípe, Brazil. We will start with this plenary session organized by the Agency Effectiveness Working Group. This afternoon, after our plenary, we will officially close the conference with a closing session. I would also like to recall that we prepared a sightseeing tour from 2 to 6 p.m. to Projeto Tamar. Now let's begin with the Agency Effectiveness Plenary titled Monitoring and Evaluating the Effectiveness of Agency Actions. As a moderator, Martin Snup, Chairman, Authority for Consumers and Markets, ACM, Netherlands. And the speakers, Csaba Rigo, President of Hungarian Competition Authority, Hungary. Alvin Ko, Chief Executive Commissioner of Competition and Consumer Commission of Singapore, Singapore. Hara Nikolopoulou, Vice President, Hellenic Competition Commission, Greece. Mariana Tavares de Araújo, NGA, CADE, Brazil. And Maria Helena Vasquez, President of Comisión de Promoción y Defensa de la Competencia, Dominican Republic. You have the floor, Mr. Snup.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me well. Now it's better? Yes, excellent. Start again. Well, welcome everyone to the plenary session of the Agency Effectiveness Working Group. And what we do today at our last session is look at how agencies can be more effective, how they can measure their effectiveness, and how can they be transparent about it. And the goal of this session is to inspire you, to learn from the experiences of other agencies, and maybe also to reflect on what you hear, and hopefully in the discussions during the Agency Effectiveness Working Group, in sessions at the next ICN, to bring this further, because it is such an important element that we measure our effectiveness. And the key question is, why is that so important? And for those of you who haven't read the book yet, I can highly recommend the book Great Antitrust Enforcers, Lessons from Regulators. It's a book that was edited by Bill Kovacic. Unfortunately, he had to leave earlier. But for those of you who were in Barcelona last year may remember that that book was freely available. If you haven't picked up a free copy at the time, Nicolas Chabry, who is in the room, from the editor and chief editor of the publisher Concurrence, promised me that if you get to him or to Bill Kovacic, you can still get a free copy sent to you. So for those agencies and NGAs and others interested in agency effectiveness and how to run an antitrust agency, I can highly recommend this book. And it contains some important lessons also about evaluations. So the key lessons that Bill draws from this book and from the interviews he had with many agency leaders, some still in position, others retired, are the importance of long-term orientation of the agency leadership, the realization that you have to accept blame and deflect credit, openness to critics, and learn from others, share successes, but also failures. And that is what this session and the idea behind measuring agency effectiveness is all about. Fortunately, we do not have to reinvent the wheel, because there is a lot of stuff, a lot of thought has been put into this topic. The OECD has a long-standing tradition on measuring the effectiveness of individual interventions. Check out the OECD's website. You'll find a screenshot of the work that the OECD has done. And I understand that they are in the process of updating the guidance, and it is a trove of very interesting material that can help agencies measuring their effectiveness. It is, of course, that the ICN's Agency Effectiveness Working Group takes this at heart as well. And it is one of the key areas of the working group. And one of the initiatives of the working group is that it set out a survey among agencies how they deal with measuring effectiveness. And the Hungarian Competition Authority, the GVH, has the leadership over this initiative, and we are extremely pleased that Csaba is here to explain us a little bit on what the key findings, the key interim findings of the survey are, because the survey is still running. So keep a close eye on these interim findings, and Csaba is going to tell us a little bit more about it.
Thank you for the floor. First of all, I would say thank you for the president of CAGI and colleagues of CAGI to organize this wonderful conference. Thank you again. The Hungarian Competition Authority, GVH, as known GVH, as a co-chair in the Agency Effectiveness Working Group, is currently carrying out a survey on the monitoring and measuring effectiveness. 34 agencies have participated in the survey so far. The survey aims to cover all reasonable notions of agency effectiveness by examining the following approaches to measurement agencies may use to assess their own effectiveness. First, monitoring and evaluating effectiveness before court. As you see, 65% of jurisdictions answered with positive answer that they carried out an evaluation on their effectiveness before court in the past 5 years. 21 of them faced with notable challenges during the monitor. Second, monitoring and evaluating the effectiveness of implementation. 24 jurisdictions answered with positive answer that they monitored and or evaluated the effectiveness of competition-related implementation in the previous 5 years. Implementation here refers to the actual realization of measures adopted by the agency, by parties, such as payment of fines, compliance with cease and desist orders, and with commitments, remedies, completion of divestitures. Simplified calculation of expected consumer benefits or savings, as also known ex ante impact assessments. These calculations of the expected benefits typically concern a set of substantive decisions taken over 1 or several years by agency, but may also involve advocacy actions. 13 agencies answered that they have carried out this type of assessment several times. Evaluation of the actual effects of individual interventions, also known as ex post evaluations, which assessments refer to individual cases, interventions, enforcement, or advocacy, and aim to identify their actual effects to draw lessons 21 agencies didn't monitor the actual effects of its past individual competition policy interventions. Other methods and approaches, this is of course not a predefined approach, but 14 agencies indicated that they use some other methods to measure their effectiveness. It will be interesting to see what other methods are used to measure agency effectiveness. The final report will detail this, of course. External assessments, naturally only those external assessments are considered which the responding agency is aware of and finds it notable. Altogether, 15 agencies have indicated that they are aware of some external assessment. I would like to draw your kind attention to the fact that there is still time to fill in the questionnaire, and I encourage every agency with relevant experience to do so. Thank you, Martin, that you mentioned that the questionnaire is open. You can, we are also happy to send you a link if you indicate your intention of participation to me or Zombor. Zombor, please stand up, who is the chief economist of the GVH. We also participate, Zombor also participates in this wonderful conference. The extended deadline is end of May, so you will have plenty of time to formulate your response to the outline questionnaire. If you have any question, please don't hesitate to contact me or Zombor. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And compliments to the GVH for organizing this for all of us, because these types of survey provide fantastic input for all of us to learn from each other. One of the reasons why measuring effectiveness is important is that because we are all, as agencies, publicly funded. And if you're publicly funded, you have to kind of give responsibility and transparency of how the money is being spent. And what I wanted to ask each of these distinguished chairs of and vice chairs of their agencies is the following. Imagine the following situation. And for those heads of agencies in the room who may sound this familiar. You know, let's say you are at a big reception. Lots of political hotshots and civil servants are in the room. Drinks are flowing. There is music playing. And you're standing there and suddenly you're being approached by a very important politician. High-ranking in the leading party within the government. And that politician, you know, approaches you with a rather direct question. Explain to me, Chair, why on earth are we spending so much money on you? And the question to the agency's heads is, what is your response? Gara.
Well, I think the first response would have to be thank you for your question. And it is indeed a very important one because we take our accountability very, very seriously, and we're happy to see that you are as committed to efficiently allocating taxpayers' money. So we are here because we are serving citizens. What we do is we make sure that companies are subject to competitive pressure. Being subject to competitive pressure means that they can bring to us citizens, to people that elect you, better products, better services at better prices, that they invest in innovation, and that they strive for their demand and do not sit comfortably on their anti-competitive agreements or their power. So because of us, in recent years, citizens can go to the ATM machine and they can get their money at a lower price than they used to a few months ago, or they can go to a restaurant and enjoy a beer from a microbrewery, because microbrewers are no longer restricted from selling their products everywhere because of exclusive agreements from a very powerful company. We need to be funded. Indeed, the money that we're getting is less than the money that we're giving back to the national budget, not only in terms of actual numbers, but in terms of customer savings and consumer surplus. So could I please ask you Mrs. Politician, for more funding, because the more funding we get, the more active we are, and the more active we are, we can do more enforcement, so more fines can come into the national budget. The more companies realize that they have chances to get caught, so they don't engage in this behavior in the first place, and the more our citizens, our fellow citizens, realize that something is good, is happening in the wider public sector to which we belong, and that their government is actually funding someone who is doing something good for them.
Sounds good. Sounds
Yeah.
really good. Alvin, what would work in Singapore?
Can you hear me? Thank you very much, Kara. I think that was an answer that is very hard to beat. In Singapore, we have an annual quantification of benefits exercise that we do. And my response to the politician would simply be, well, if you look at the amount of money that we spend every year in our budget versus the benefits that we bring to the economy, based on the quantification of benefits exercise, we would far exceed the amount that you spend in our to give us in budget. And with that, I would also make the argument that if you give us more money, then we'll ensure that there will be more benefits back to the economy. And I think this is something that's extremely important for competition authorities, that we must constantly demonstrate our worth to the economy. I think there's one way to argue it based on qualitative principles, but at the same time, what politicians are always driven by are quantitative numbers. So I think it's a balance of both, and that's something that we strive to do in Singapore. Thank you.
Very good. And Maria, what would work in Dominican Republic?
Thank you. My response, maintaining plain competition among company is essential for business activity. Efficiency ensured that consumers have access to quality products at fair prices. Investing in an independent competition agency is not inexpensive, but an investment in the development in social equity. Although the agency budget in the Dominican Republic is low compared to international standard, according to OECD peer review on competition law and game policy conducted in 2023 and published in 2024. We have achieved much in promoting, defending, and advocating for competition. Despite this, the budget has remained static, the government restriction. Pro Competencia has made significant efforts in competition advocacy, such as published the first annual competition report of the Dominican Republic, and has promoting education through university competition. Additionally, it has issued numerous reports and established a competition observatory that has been replicated by other agencies in the region. The agency has also sanctioned case of anti-competitive practice, demonstrating that investing in the benefit the proper functioning of the market and consumer protection. In summary, the money invested in Pro Competencia is an excellent investment for the well-being of consumer in the economy overall. Thank you.
Fantastic. Really good. Really good. Yes. It's good for consumers. That's what we have to say. And Csaba, in Hungary, what would you see? You have a fantastic track record also in consumer protection. So would you say something about competition and consumer protection, or would you take everything together?
Yes, we have right to protect consumers also. I would reverse the argument. What if there were no competition authority? I could illustrate the need for a competition authority with a simple example. Think of the office as a seat belt or a brake in a car. If you don't have these safety devices, it will be dangerous to drive a car to participate in a traffic. This is how competition in the market works. We need certain safety devices to keep businesses in check. From the moment they enter the market, the need to fasten their seat belts, which in this case means complying with competition rules. Both the purchase and maintenance of safety devices, safety equipment, costs money. Of course, as does the maintenance of competition authority to ensure that there is proper competition in the market. So my answer to the important politician, it is worth to it spending money on our agency. I would like to refer you to the impact assessment of the Hungarian Competition Authority, which I will talk more about later. For now, I would just like to mention that the quantified welfare gains achieved through the agency's competition interventions is much larger amount than amount spent on the functioning of the GVH.
No, thank you, Csaba. And that is a fantastic bridge which shows that how important evaluating, measuring the effectiveness and the efficiency of the agency is if you deal with these situations. That we as heads of agencies need to be always ready to answer this question even in unexpected circumstances. And for that, we need the data and we need our evaluations in order to be able to demonstrate that we are worth spending money on, and even more money. So we continue with our discussion on how we are going to measure and evaluate the effectiveness of agencies. And we'll break it down into 3 segments, of which not all speakers, but some of the speakers will respond with experiences from their own agencies in order to share and learn from each other. So the first segment is general effectiveness of the agency. So general KPIs, key performance indicators, general how is the agency using the money. So that is more in general. Second, very important indicator of our success is judicial track record. You know, in most of our, well, it depends a little bit on the agency, but in case of my agency, every decision is being challenged before the courts. So how much success, do we have a success indicator for success with the courts? How we measure that, are we transparent about it? And that's the second segment on which we're going to discuss. And the third segment is an evaluation of individual cases. Did the merger remedies that we imposed, were they effective? Did the cartel behavior actually stop? Is there more compliance in the country? So that looks at the effectiveness of our interventions in the economy. But first are the general measurements, general KPIs of the agency. And Gara, you have a fantastic slide that you use as an agency. You see here, in which you can explain also to the public and this important politician what you do and how you measure it. Can you say a little bit more about that?
Thank you, Martin. There's absolutely no doubt that we need to monitor and evaluate ourselves, not only for reasons of public accountability, but because the results of this monitoring are fed back into our strategic planning, into a better use of our resources. So we need this evaluation, not only as a face towards the outside world, but also so that we can become better at what we do. There is no single way of evaluating. There is no single indicator of seeing. We need to see it in a holistic way. We need to have both quantitative and qualitative indicators, and there are many ways of doing it. This slide shows us some of our main achievements in the last few years, and as you can see, they concern various factors from our technological transformation and institutional organization, efficiency, timeliness, transparency, engagement with stakeholders, and of course an overall oversight to try to make ourselves better. All of these are depicted in an annual report that we are obliged to draft every year and submit to the Parliament, and this has sometimes led to quite heated discussions in the Parliament about what we're doing and what we are not doing. So this is quite a formal document. It's our face, it's what we have to do, it represents what we've done, it's directed to specific areas of enforcement and policy, but also people management and of course advocacy. This measuring of our effectiveness is coupled by other ways of measuring what we do, some less formal and some internal. So of course we have an internal evaluation of our personnel that's very, very useful for knowing where we're going. It's also very useful for them, and this is perhaps the field that is more directly linked to having a transparent and very, very clear strategic plan as to what everybody has to do. This year, the Greek government introduced, last year actually, but it just came into effect, introduced a provision whereby our staff, if it achieves its targets or a certain percentage of its target, may receive an extra bonus on their salary. This is being implemented now for the first time. We can set the targets, and then we can evaluate what percentage of these targets have been reached. And this amounts to quite a significant bonus on their salary. This is a measurement of their effectiveness. It's also a huge incentive to achieve their targets. We have, of course, to be very, very careful so that we don't slip into quantitative targets and to the detriment of quality. But this is, as I said, this is the first time that we're doing it. We will revisit the way we set our targets and the way we evaluate our people. But at the end of the day, it's very, very important that they can receive a very measurable reward for achieving their targets. So this is one new thing, that is the individual evaluation of the staff and the bonus for achieving targets, which is quite new, and as it evolves, I will get back to you on what we've learned from this process. And another new thing that we're doing at the Hellenic Competition Commission is, apart from the evaluation, the annual report, the evaluation by the Parliament, etc., we have by law, we must set up an expert committee that will in turn set up a series of key performance indicators and draft a report on how we're doing to achieve them. Now, this committee has been set up quite recently. It is indeed comprised of distinguished academics and practitioners. We have a first proposal on their KPIs, which is not yet public, but what I can say about it is that it adopts a holistic approach to how we can be evaluated, and it evolves around three areas that we have also talked about in this working group, and is also shown, I think, in the working papers of OECD and ICN, that we need to measure our effectiveness based on what we do for enforcement, what we do on advocacy, and what we do on an ex-post evaluation of our competitiveness. So there are ways of measuring our direct costs and our enforcement activity. That includes issues such as the direct cost of our personnel and equipment, but also the number of investigations, decisions, duration of cases, people management, duration, how long it takes to hire or to replace personnel, how many positions of trust are left without someone to fill them in, and how long it takes to do so. An ex-post evaluation of our interventions, of course, and in fact that's quite difficult, and an evaluation of our competition policy and our international status and standing. So we're expecting KPIs on this that will be more specific, and an evaluation of how we're doing. But I'd like to say that all of this, in my view, it all depends on starting with a very clear plan, because if we don't know where we want to go, then we cannot measure how we've done on our way there. And it's challenging, I think, to have a plan that is ambitious and realistic, that is quite definite, but also leaves room for us to act when we need to be relevant. So.
No, very good. No, I think that's a key lesson, and extremely valuable that you share that with the audience, is that, you know, agencies should make a plan and then measure how they work against that plan and be transparent about it. So that is, I think, a key lesson for agencies out of the working group. By the way, very interested what you're saying about the bonus system. I don't know how it is in other countries. Something like that would be rather controversial in the Netherlands. But definitely something that we have to think about, and maybe that's also something that we can discuss at the working group level at the ICN at a further meeting, because that is probably something that we're all, you know, looking for. It works in the private sector. Why wouldn't it work in the public sector? Leaving aside complications. So yeah, let's move on, and maybe we can come back to it later. Because another measurement of output is basically the output on whatever you want to call it, consumer welfare, total welfare, the welfare of the country. And the GVH, Csaba, you already referred to it, has done a lot of work about this, has published also about it. Maybe you can tell us a bit more.
Exactly. Thank you for the floor. I would like to say a few words about the ex-ante impact assessment carried out by the GVH. As you know, benefit assessment is not mandatory in Hungary. And the GVH carries out ex-ante impact assessment on its own initiative. Its aim is quantifying the benefits of competition law enforcement and demonstrating its use. These assessments are inspired by international best practices and aim to capture, even if only partially, consumer savings resulting from merger control and cartel enforcement at the moment, and other antitrust issues. But we try to expand the measure on consumer protection cases also. Think of, for example, Black Friday. It is already a decade-long program. The first assessment was carried out for the period 2008-2012. The calculation of those consumer savings is highly simplified. It relies on data are available for the GVH and on non-conservative assumptions. It ignores indirect effects such as deterrence and much of non-price effects. The actual gain is likely to be more than the level quantified. Indeed, it may be several times higher. I would like to explain it with an example. When we stop a cartel, it cannot harm consumer anymore. We assume that without our intervention, the cartel would have continued and price would have been higher. We usually know the size of the affected turnover. When we also know the amount of the cartel surcharge and the additional time the cartel would have been run, we can calculate the consumer harm we prevented from occurring by our intervention. When we don't have case-specific information on the surcharge and the future length of the conduct, we apply conservative assumptions. For example, in case of a cartel, we assume that without our intervention, prices would have been 10% higher for 2 years. These very simple calculations, these are very simple. They wouldn't stand at court for damage claims, but they give us a clue about our impact. The latest assessment of the GVH, as you see, partially quantify the direct benefits derived from its cases closed in the 2017 and 2022 period related to anti-competitive practices and mergers. The exercise revealed that in the aforementioned period, consumers saved a sum that is more than 1.5 times the total budget of the GVH in the same period as a result of the work of the GVH. The purpose of quantification is to show the magnitude of the financial benefit to consumers of the work of the GVH compared to the situation without the GVH. And the statements lead back to the question posed in the keynote, why are we spending so much money on on your agency? The answer is that you can live without safety devices in transport, but it is not worth it. And the same applies to the competition authority. You can live without it, but if you consider the interest of consumers and the state, it is not worth it. Thank you.
No, very good. And also compliments to the GVH that they put this in English on the website, because I think this is an important issue for all our agencies. If we want to learn from each other, we have to use our common language, which is English, and in that way, everyone can learn from it. So excellent work. Marianne, as a NGA, you are uniquely positioned because you know us agencies, and on the other hand, you also have a bit of an external position. You are an important key stakeholder for us as agency, as working from a law firm here in Brazil. And what would you like to see as a stakeholder to the work that we are doing? What should we use as KPIs? How transparent should we be to satisfy your interests?
Well, thank you, Martin, for this question and for being part of this extremely interesting discussion. I'd like to see more of the same. This is, and I'd say this from two perspectives. I love what you just said about putting out your experiences on your website in English. That's definitely helpful for technical assistance and international cooperation purposes, but it's also critical for us because one aspect of what these indicators have for us is that they help us advise the clients, adjust expectations, and also help understand what's a priority and what's not. And of course, as a consumer, I'm thrilled to hear about all these metrics too. But when I tell a client that, for example, and these numbers are extremely impressive, that CAGI adjudicates on average 630 merger cases a year. When I tell a client that, look, if you're in for fast track, you can expect, and these are 2023 numbers, your case to be cleared on average less than 13 days. But if you're in for a standard review process, well, your case may take on average 117 days. Or if you're willing to try CAGI's e-filing platform, I believe CAGI holds a world record. They cleared a case that was filed through the e-filing system in 17 hours. So I think that helps the companies and stakeholders in general to understand how the agency works, what's on their plate with respect to priorities, but also so that everyone is very busy, but there's one of 630 cases that are being reviewed, but also that depending on which category that they fall, which type of case they fall, that they can have a case cleared in 17 hours. So yes, these numbers are critical to help society in general understand the value of competition, but also from a private practitioner perspective, helps us advise a client better.
No, that's a very valuable lesson, I think, for all of us, is to hear from key stakeholders how important transparency, for example, on the length of administrative proceedings is, and how we should report on it. Also to manage expectations with our constituents that we all have as agencies. That leaves brings to the second topic. So we have two more topics. One is the judicial track record, and then is the evaluation of the effectiveness of individual cases. And now we move on to the judicial track record. I mean, it is something that, well, I know that lawyers have on their mind when they're advising our clients, is that, and we as agencies also have on our mind if we decide to take on a risky case or not. Alvin, can you say something about how you deal with judicial track record in Singapore, how you report on it, and what your views are, and of course, what is your track record at the moment?
So first of all, some context. Singapore, i.e. my agency, the CCCS, we have an administrative competition enforcement system where we are vested with powers to investigate infringements and then follow up with a adjudication process, and then ultimately we can impose directions as well as financial penalties on infringing parties. So it's quite similar to the UK CMA's process as well as DigiCom, and we take this process very seriously, and we have over the number of years exercised our powers to find parties, and then parties who are then subject to these orders can then bring the matter up on appeal to the Competition Appeal Board, and then if they are not successful there, they can continue on a point of law to the High Court as well as to the Court of Appeal, which is the Supreme Court in Singapore. So that's the background to it. In the last close to 20 years of our existence, CCCS has had a very strong enforcement track record, but of course, like the Dutch Competition Authority, many of our cases are also subject to appeal. We have received a total of 22 separate notices of appeal across 10 different infringement decisions, and out of these 22 separate notices of appeals, 2 were withdrawn, and then a few more were then are currently pending before the Competition Appeal Board. Just a point of some pride for my agency is that of all these cases, every one of these cases we have been upheld on liability, although with a little bit of a blush face, some of this we have been subject to a reduction in terms of the financial penalty. In many of these cases, I just want to take this opportunity to highlight some of the more notable cases. And the most recent one, recent one, was an appeal by Uber against our decision to subject them to a financial penalty as well as to certain orders in their merger with another digital platform company called Grab in Singapore. And the Competition Appeal Board heard our case in 2018, and they dismissed the appeal by Uber against our decision that the said merger resulted in a substantial lessening of competition in the ride-hailing platform market in Singapore. The CAB in particular upheld the directions imposed by us on Uber and Grab at the material time to lessen the impact of the transaction on drivers and riders and to ensure that the ride-hailing platform market remained open to new players. And in particular, in this particular case, we were upheld on the financial penalty imposed on Uber as well, and that was to a sum of 6.5 million. So that was a big case for us in terms of merger control. Another case which took place early on in our history was an abuse of dominance case called Cystic, and this was a company which was somehow owned and related to the government. We took action against that company, which was active in the open ticketing services business in both for both event promoters and ticket buyers, and we imposed a fine of close to $1 million on that company. Again, the Competition Appeal Board heard the case over a couple of days, and they then decided that they would upheld us on the liability issues. However, they then reduce the financial penalty by about a quantum of about 20%. Having said that, it was a case that was very early on in our history, and I think that was several good lessons that were learned from that case. Very recently in 2018 as well, we had a case of a cartel, and in that case, that involved sale and distribution of fresh chicken products. And we have heard over the last couple of days that food inflation is extremely critical issue for many, many competition authorities around the world. And in this particular case, we had taken action against a group of fresh chicken distributors for price fixing, as well as for market sharing in their respective businesses. Several of them had participated in a non-aggression pact, which is a market sharing agreement for which they would then agreed not to compete for each other's customers. So on appeal, the Competition Appeal Board reduced penalties imposed on 8 out of 13 of these distributors and found that, again, they were found that to have engaged in cartel conduct, but there was also a slight reduction in terms of the financial penalties. Just a word on the Competition Appeal Board. I think it would not be complete if we talk only about the work of the Competition Authority. The higher Competition Appeal Board, which supervises our cases, the Competition Appeal Board has been extremely industrious, I have to say. Generally, they have a very short number of hearing dates that's required to dispose of most of the issues, and we have a very active pre-trial process by which they would then crystallize many of the issues first, and then the hearing dates are usually quite short. Many of these cases take place over 1 day. In many of the cases, we've taken more than 1 day simply because of the number of parties who have appealed. But on average, you would say that number of hearing days is about 3 days, and a subsequent decision with a full grounds of decision written takes place over about 6 months. So it's something which would be that businesses would actually be quite interested to know that we can actually deal with many of these cases quite quickly.
Very good. Thank you very much, Alvin, about explaining to us how you work with the judicial track record. For younger agencies, judicial track record is also important, and it can be maybe sometimes a bit scary if for the first time, if as an agency you have to go to court and defend your case. Can you say something about it, Maria?
Good question. To respond to question, it is necessary to remember that Pro Competencia is a relative young agency which initiated full function in 2017. During the last 2 years, as an example, we experiment in significant development in the comprehension and application of the competency legislation by the judiciary. Thanks to the institutional effort to guide the court operator, judges, lawyers, district attorneys, court experts, through workshop, conference, etc., influencing by better education to a better quality of the decision-making process. One of the most fundamental achievements in the context is the judiciary recognition of the per se rule, as well as the ability of the executive director to impose a cautionary measure which represent a significant development toward person of its litigation file. Thanks to the effort made by Pro Competencia, we are working toward the recognition of the importance of a free competitive market supporting such concept with initiative to develop a better education and to communication in this subject, complex and technical. In this sense, we are coordinating a workshop aimed to the communication professional as a joint effort with the UNCITAL, UNTAC, pardon, for August this year, reinforcing in this way a strong and well-informed competition culture with the purpose of building a clear and undistorted message for the general population.
Very good, and very interesting track record also to see, and the initiatives that you take to work together with the judiciary, which is also an important topic. Gara, how do you look at your track record? Is it something that you keep track of? Are you transparent about it? Can you say something about that?
Thank you. Yes, we do keep a track record. Our decisions may be appealed before the Court of Appeals, and after that at the Supreme Administrative Court on points of law, something like the Conseil d'État in Greece. Our records show that we are highly successful. Our cases stand before the Court of Appeals and before the Conseil d'État. So in very few cases, our fines are reduced, but we have more than 90% success in the judicial review of our cases. However, measuring our success before the courts, it is important, and of course we need to keep a record about it. But I think that although 100% is a fantastic goal, sometimes we have to accept a risk that maybe we are trying to move things a little bit forward, and maybe the court may not agree with us, and we may have made a mistake. So of course we're thriving for an excellent judicial review record, but sometimes that may not be the case. We have not seen it till now, but we are aware that this might happen, and so far as we try to push things forward, this is an increased possibility. In terms of so it's quite difficult to measure our success on the basis of a judicial review, and we do not have an exact number above which we would say it is if it's 60 or 70 or 80 or 90, above which it would be successful and below which it would not be, other than personal assessments as to what each of us considers. There is a difficulty in presenting these results to the media, because sometimes when the case is final and the decision is issued by the Conseil d'État, it might be many, many years after our decision was taken, and the market may have moved and it might seem irrelevant. So what we mostly do is we are, of course, obliged to publish the appeal decisions and the Conseil d'État decisions on our website, but we mostly present these cases in academic conferences and in our discussion and in our advocacy policy, more than issue a press release about a decision that was issued on the first instance by us many years previously. All our cases, as you said, all our cases are challenged before the court, so there's a huge amount of work there. We are quite fortunate that we have a very successful settlement procedure, and that has decreased the amount of litigation for us. But what has increased in the last few years is the number of decisions that are challenged before courts when we decide to not do something. So that will be either complaints that we find unsubstantiated and we file them, or cases that we decide not to proceed with because they do not meet the points in our prioritization system. So these are also quite difficult to measure, and we have to defend our discretion to decide on our policy and to defend our prioritization system and our decision on what we need to pursue, because we obviously cannot pursue everything. So
Very good.
from us.
No, that's interesting, and I think it's another example of an agency that is dealing and thinking about a track record and judicial track record. And there is a bit of a dilemma, is that I think many of us agencies would be extremely proud and happy with a 100% success rate. But on the other hand, you can ask yourself the question, yeah, but if we have a 100% success rate, are we maybe too risk averse? Are we willing to take a risk? So we had the dilemma at the ACM about this, and as an official guideline, we said as the board of the agency, we need to win 75% of our cases. And it's not scientific, it's basically we said, well, if you are a lawyer, you can be happy with 50%. If we have 100%, we're probably too risk averse, so we're going to sit in the middle. 75% is fine. And the interesting thing is, it relaxed the staff members at the agency, because they knew, okay, now we can take this risky case and we will not be punished for losing, because sometimes you lose a case in court. It's not bad, it's just the reality how it is. But this is something to consider, and Csaba, can you say something about how does it work at the GVH?
Yes, so similar to the Dominican Republic, I must emphasize that in antitrust cases, it is crucial to assess the legal implication of the conduct in question and impose fines where appropriate. It is crucial to have a solid legal basis in place to determine whether the authority has right to investigate the conduct in question. But the difficulties of measuring, there are some difficulties of measuring and winning and losing cases. According to our point of view, the success of the legal process depends on the legal basis being upheld, regardless of the fine amount. The Hungarian legal system differs from that of the EU, where the amount of the fine can be changed by the court. Most antitrust cases involve complex conduct, which requires a complex legal assessment. In complex cases, we may win a part of the case and lose another part. The importance of those wins and losses can be very different. Court proceedings are often lengthy and may involve multiple appeals. Therefore, the number of wins and losses is not always indicative of the overall success of a case. It is crucial to consider the context and circumstances surrounding each case. I think that the outcome of a case may indicate that our analysis was incomplete, or what we didn't effectively communicate our position to the court. Not so easy to measure. What is the benchmark for success? Cases are classified based on the number of instances where the court found an error of law in the legal basis. An absolute indicator could be the percentage of the amount of the fine imposed was upheld by the court. How to present result to media at the GVH? The GVH is actively communicating on all fronts. It communicates its activities openly and transparently to the media and to the public. All antitrust decisions of the GVH are public, and if subject to review, the result and published decision are available on the GVH's website. Most of them in English, but if you love Hungarian language, switch on, because this is one of the wonderful language of the world.
For those of you who do not know what Hungarian language looks like, I can highly recommend that. It's for most of us incomprehensible to read and understand. Very good. No, thank you very much,
Martin,
Csaba.
maybe I could just
yes, sure.
have a response to what you said just now. I think I totally agree with you about ensuring that we don't under-enforce. And I think it's quite important for us, while we try to maintain an excellent judicial track record, it shouldn't be coming at the expense of failing to condemn a conduct that is anti-competitive for fear of the high legal risk. So I think this is something that we have taken cognizance of over the last couple of years. But I suppose as a young competition agency, it was important for us to establish a strong track record. And in that sense, demonstrating that the quality of decisions as well as processes. And I think on this point, processes was quite an important part for us to get in order first. And I would imagine in the next 20 years of our continued enforcement work, we would aim to deal with a bigger variety of cases and definitely not shy away from cases with a little bit more higher legal risk. But I was interested to hear about the 75% number that you mentioned just now, and I'll be interested to hear from other competition authorities as to what is a good and reliable number, sufficient to perhaps convince the politicians that that is a good number. Thank you.
Yeah, very good. Thank you, Alvin. And it's a very valid point that you make on kind of establishing a young agency in society with a judicial track record. So, no, very, very useful. I think we have about 12 more minutes before we end the panel, and that leaves not a lot of time, but some time to discuss the third segment of this panel, and that is, we first looked at general effectiveness of the agency, KPIs, etc. Then we looked at the judicial track record. But finally, the final segment is, how do we measure success in an individual case? Were we able to achieve what we were planning to achieve? Did merger remedies actually work in practice? And there's a whole lot of literature and analysis also done by the OECD, what I mentioned earlier, about how to do that and how to do that transparently. Alvin, you have in Singapore also quite a lot of experience with that, and maybe you're willing to share that with the audience.
I think in Singapore sometimes we can be accused of being a bit obsessed with having key performance indicators, and that's something that we use quite a fair bit. It is developed jointly together with our parent ministry, the Ministry of Trade and Industry, and it's part of a matrix that depends that affects our funding and budget over upcoming years. So these KPIs are mainly outcome-based measures of CCCS enforcement and advocacy works, amongst others. So on a yearly basis, we do a quantification of benefits exercise that I mentioned earlier that arises from our decisions and interventions for competition cases. And this includes cartel cases, abuse of dominance, and SLC mergers that are prohibited under our powers. In these cases, we look at the benefits accrued to consumers, and it's taken to be the overcharge and price effect avoided on an annualized basis on the result of our intervention in the relevant market. And that's something that's similar with the Hungarian competition authorities' approach. Not only do we look at these active enforcement cases, we also deal with a quantification of our impact in terms of market studies. And yesterday we heard about quite a fair bit about market studies and interventions that competition authorities actually embark on. And in these cases, we look at them, we study the evidence that our advocacy effects has had on the relevant markets. And then we also determine what is the impact and the correction that we have done with respect to certain market behaviors and whether it has led to the establishment or change in terms of policies. Just two examples. We have done so in a market inquiry on car parts in Singapore, where we directly intervened in the market by working with major car dealers. And also in another study we have done in the supply of formula milk for infants and young children in Singapore. I think this will come with some interest to young mothers and families. And the recommendations that we had taken following that market study has led to regulatory changes in the market, which then facilitated the entry of more affordable brands of formula milk products. And that's an example in terms of our work for inflation and also to try and raise the number of babies that we have in Singapore, which is falling over the years. And we have also extended the quantification exercise to cover advisories provided to government agencies in Singapore. And we found this work to be extremely satisfying, because right at the upstream, we can then influence the decisions that might be taken by government agencies, influence the policies, and then when these policies are subsequently implemented, you can see the impact and the effect that we have in terms of our work. And that's something that a lot of our staff find very satisfying. Just one last point about post-action studies. We have done post-action studies over the years, and an example of this post-merger studies was in the kidney dialysis market, where we actually gave a clearance for 2 major providers of dialysis services in Singapore. We did a market study some years later, and we were found and happy to find that our decision to clear the merger was the correct one, or rather it did not lead to adverse effects in the market post-merger. And the prices for dialysis services had fallen relative to other medical treatments in the market, and I think this is something that came as some satisfaction for us. Final point on the slides, one way that we have also been measuring our effectiveness is in terms of the businesses who look at us and wonder whether they should be reporting any errant competitors to us. 71% of them have actually found that they are likely to complain and report to us if they are aware of anti-competitive practices engaged by competitors. And one point of satisfaction has always been that they don't think that by reporting to us, it takes up too much of their time, and so they're quite prepared to come in and spend some management time in a sense. Thank you very much.
No, thank you, Alvin. And the very interesting point, and also the second point that you make, is that sometimes it's forgotten that it's also good to check what happened after you clear a merger. We tend to evaluate merger remedies, but not all agencies from time to time check whether when they cleared a merger that it was indeed the right way to do. From my own experience, I can tell that we reached the reverse analysis. We cleared a merger, which was a borderline merger, and with the benefit of hindsight, we were too risk averse, and what we feared that the prices would increase actually happened. And the good thing about it is that with the next merger of the same company, we could say, okay, now we stop this because we looked at the ex post assessment of the first merger clearance. So that's how kind of merger evaluation also can help in practice. Mariana, you gave us a very good outside perspective on the first question. What type of KPIs do you want to see from a private practitioner, also to help your clients? Can you say something about, on this topic? What would you like to see, and what is Kaje doing?
Well, sure. But since I have the mic open, I'd just like to very briefly react to the earlier question, very briefly, just to say that, well, I really liked what you mentioned about being the 75 plus 25. It's a little bit like the number, sometimes the fact that if you don't miss a flight now and again, it's probably an indication that you're spending too much time at airports. So it's not the best allocation of your time. But I didn't mean that. But the other point that I'd also like to make is that I'm not so much interested in the number. So if you look at Kaji's numbers for judicial review, if you look at the 2017 number, there's a success rate of 79%, and 2023 it's 50-something. I'm less interested about that, and then you have to read, and every one of you mentioned that, you have to read these numbers with a grain of salt. And this also means, so I'm less worried about Kaji's reversal in the courts in procedural fines, minor procedural fines, than major substantive outcomes of the case. And for us practitioners, this is critical. And I think the measure that we want to see is if our court system is deferential to the agencies. That's what you want to see, because otherwise we become irrelevant. We lose our market to the litigation partners. But to the last, and the third On the third point, CAGI has been publishing in its annual reports, and it does in its annual reports, it publishes these numbers with respect to the success rates in court. And it also, since 2020, has published working papers with impact assessment on its performance. And again, that's very informative for us to provide guidance with respect for our clients. And the last thing I'll say is not related to CAGI, but I'll refer you to these working documents, which are working papers, which are very, very informative. But the last thing I'll say is that yesterday we were we had the award ceremony of the ICN and World Bank project on advocacy project contest. And over the years, I guess the panel of judges have noticed how much better the agencies are doing in reporting how they assess the impact of their actions. And actually, one of the topics that was one of the 4 topics this year was on raising awareness on competition by communicating impact on results. So not only it's good to show how you're spending your money and how you're doing a good job, but it's also a great communication tool. And having participated in the award contest for a number of years, my view is that this has been improved over the years, and that's very good to see.
Very good, and thank you very much, Mariana, for this, again, outside perspective on what we do. I think we need to kind of close this session. I think we can continue to talk about it, and I hope we will continue to talk about it, but at another conference. I think the key message of this session is to all agencies, evaluate your effectiveness, evaluate your interventions, be transparent about it, and share it with each other, and share it with all of us, preferably in a language that we can all read. And because we are here to learn from each other, and that is, I think, also the essence and the key of the ICN. And with that, I would like to hope that you can join me in a round of applause for our panelists that provided valuable insights, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you to all the speakers again, and we will now start the closing session. I would like to welcome to the stage Alexandre Cordeiro, President of CAGI. And also, I'm inviting Andreas Munt, President of the Bundeskartellamt and ICN Steering Group Chair. and Mr. Chris Prevet, General Counsel, Competition and Markets Authority, UK. Mr. Cordeiro, you have the floor.
How was the conference? So somebody wrote a long speech for me, but I'm not going to read it. So, I see that you are happy that I'm not going to read this speech. But I want to just, this is the end of the conference. It was a long journey to be here. In this conference, we had 37 hours of discussion. We had 23 breakout sections. We had also 400 people, 80 countries, and we had also 1.5 hours of drums yesterday. But this thing just happened because we had the support of all of you. And I really want to thank you in first place, Andreas Mund and the whole steering group, to believe that we could do an event like this. I want to thank you, the team of Costa do Sauípe. That was wonderful. You see, everybody was working very happy and helpful with everybody. Thank you to Costa do Sauípe team. I want to thank the NGAs that came here a long way. We had a lot of Brazilian NGAs and also from abroad. So thank you very much. But this conference just happened because of a group of people from CADE that worked like crazy during 1 year together with the ICN staff. Because of the difference of the time, many of those meetings was out of the time that they were working, and they put a lot of effort to make this conference happen. So thank you very much. And I would like to really call here to the stage right now those people that made this thing happen. So Bruna Pamplona, where is she? Okay, that she's not here. She's gonna come. Somebody call Bruna, please. She has to be here. Alessandra Rosa, where is she? Bruna, come to the stage, please. Lilian Macedo, Robert Pinheiro, Rebeca Falcão, Maria Luísa Cury, Tatiane Aguiar, Helena Carla, Bruna Cardoso, Sara Silva, Juliana Moraes, Karine Penerai, Diogo Rocha, Kleber Anjos, Vinícius Reis e Felipe Dias. Please, everybody, come to the stage. So there is one thing that I learned always hire people better than you. And they are. And I want to call here, close to me, Bruna, Alessandra, and I have a gift for you. In the name of everybody, thank you for organizing this. So, thank you one more time. But the highest moment of the conference, in my opinion, actually two highest moments of the conference, in my opinion. One is Andrés Mundi speaking Portuguese. That was just amazing. And the other one is also made by him. He was dancing yesterday. That was incredible. I really like it. So, one more time, thank you for everybody come here to Brazil. We're very proud to show a little bit of our culture. And I know that for many of you, it's a long trip. I know that people stayed 48 hours inside of our airplane. Long trip. People from East Timor came is great. Thank you for that. So, and I will end here and say that now we can rest a little bit. We have the whole afternoon to relax, and the conference is finishing. Thank you very much. I want to give the floor to Andrés Mundi.
Well, I also have a long speech, and it's going to be a short one. No Portuguese, by the way. And yeah, I know, but maybe you hear some English in Edinburgh next year. Huh? That's easy going. Well, before saying something on the conference, I look ahead a little bit. We have some formalities of which I want to inform you, and then some takeaways, short takeaways from the conference. We will continue our work. It's been a short ICN year. After the ICN year is before the ICN year. We will continue our work on structure in the ICN. We have already strengthened the working groups, the engine room of the ICN. We have increased the number of co-chairs from 3 to 5, and I can say that has offered lots of new opportunities for agencies to come in and take over some leadership role that is working very well. I'm very happy that we see old faces now in the working groups, but also new faces in the working groups. As I said, that looks very well. Here behind me on the slide, you can see the new structure of the working groups, and I think we are very well equipped, not of the steering group, sorry, of the working groups, and I think we are very well equipped to go into a very successful future in the new ICN year. We will also continue to do our work on the operational framework of the ICN. We had a wonderful session here in Brazil on the future, well, format in which we take decisions, also in the steering group. And here I'm very optimistic that we will have a good result within the next weeks. But the ICN is not only about structure, it's also about content. We have lots of great projects in the pipeline. In the advocacy group, we look at successful advocacy strategies to the judiciary, just to give you an example. In the agency effectiveness working group, we look, for example, at the role of our chief and senior economists. We look at effective training on competition. In the cartel working group, we look at proactive detection and sanction in the toolkit project, and we will overhaul a chapter on the ICN's anti-cartel enforcement manual. And also the Virtual Working Group will continue to work on the recommended practices with regard to unilateral effects, coordinated effects, counterfactuals, market definition, and so on. And the Unilateral Conduct Working Group will look at theories of harm and remedies in digital markets. We have seen also here in SAOIPA how difficult it is to find remedies for digital markets, to find remedies for AI. Is it a remedy of an efficiency agency to set up a remedy that obliges a company to make AI stupid? I'm not sure that this is the way forward, but that sketches out how difficult it will be to find good remedies here. We have 3 workshops, the essence of ICN, in the pipeline. The first one is going to be a virtual sustainability workshop held by the French authorité. And then we have in-person meetings, of course, the ICN cartel workshop in October in Mexico City, and the ICN merger workshop in November in Taipei. When it comes to the conference, there are so many people to thank. And first I want to mention there were many people among you, the attendees, who came to me, Alexandre, and said, Andreas, this was a very special and it was a very, very excellent conference. We had great panels, we had great breakouts, it was always substantial, it was informed, it was interesting, sometimes it was entertaining. I know there was a lot of bilateral exchange among delegations. Gina Kess-Gottlieb, who had already to leave for Sydney, in order to make sure she'll be back by Monday morning to be in the office. Australia is on the way to overhaul its merger regime, and she said she had so many excellent bilateral, fruitful and helpful talks here in SAOIPA that alone was already worth coming here. There are so many more people I'd like to thank. First of all, I would like to thank you, the attendees, for coming here. It was kind of a competition who had the longest journey. Usually that's Gina Kess-Gottlieb from Australia, that goes without saying. This time she only made it to rank 3 with 36 hours. Rank 2 was Fiji, our colleague Joel Abraham, with 46 hours to get to this conference. And rank 1 is our colleague Cosme Fatima Baptista da Silva from East Timor, who spent 48 hours to get here with 3 colleagues from East Timor. And this is quite an endeavor, and this is quite an effort to come to this conference, and you see it's really worth it. I would also like to thank all agencies that have been involved in organizing this conference. That is done by many people, the horizontal coordinator, our OECD UNCTAD liaisons, our special project teams, the working groups, the ICN Secretariat in Canada, of course, with Nigel. And of course, I need to mention them as well today, my staff at the chair's office with Barbara, Olaf, and Marlin. Also some work for them, and I thank all these people who have made that possible to come here. But of course, there's one man I need to thank, who has thanked everyone, but he deserves a big thank you, Alexandre, and that is to you. I must say, you have made this conference really special. That is by your personality, that is by the excellent organization, but I mean, we in Germany, we also know how to organize a conference, but I'm not sure that we would be able to inject the same dose of joy of life into this conference. And at the latest by last night, with that singing and dancing, you gave us a feeling again that this is not just a community. In a way, it is really a family. And I include not only the agencies, I include also the NGAs that accompany our work for many, many years. It's a family feeling that you have been able to inspire us here, and to you personally, to your team that we have just seen here, a big thank you for this feeling, for this joy of life you gave to this ICN family. Thank you so much. Chris, I don't envy you. The next conference is going to be in Edinburgh. I think one thing is for sure already, it's going to be colder. We hope it won't rain. And we're really looking forward to it. Chris, you have the floor now, and come here and present where will we be next year. To you, many thanks, safe travels. It was great with you, and I'm looking forward to see you again wherever we meet at the latest next year. Thanks a lot. Safe travels.
First, I want to extend my thanks to Alessandro Caggi, the ICN, for an absolutely fantastic 3 days in such a beautiful location, covering so many competition issues which we didn't just dance around, we engaged with thoroughly and substantively, with the occasional caipirinha thrown in for good measure. I'm really pleased to announce, as Andreas has mentioned, that the UK Competition and Markets Authority will be hosting the annual ICN conference next year in 2025. All of us at the CMA invite you to join us in the culture-rich capital of Scotland, Edinburgh, from the 7th of May to the 9th of May next year. And this is the first time that the CMA will be hosting the ICN Annual Conference. We're one of the founding members of the ICN, and we're working hard to make sure it will be an unforgettable experience. A little bit cooler perhaps, a little bit wetter perhaps, but nonetheless memorable and unforgettable. So we really look forward to continuing the exchange that we have, the conversations that we have around promoting global competition and cooperation in the field of competition law. We can't wait to get you all together in Edinburgh to help continue to share your views and experiences and give us that continued space to explore the cutting-edge issues that we all face in the rapidly moving global world that we operate in. We've prepared a short video. I'm hoping my colleagues can put that up now, so please enjoy for a showcase of what you can look forward to next year.
Welcome to ICN 2025. I'm very pleased to invite all of you to join us for the 2025 ICN Annual Conference. It will be a privilege to welcome you to Edinburgh. The ICN Annual Conference is a unique opportunity to bring together the ICN's member agencies from around the world. As the UK's competition authority, we have benefited hugely from participating in ICN conferences across the globe. And as hosts for 2025, we want to play our part in further strengthening relationships between ICN members and building on our collective efforts to deliver effective competition law enforcement globally. I'm therefore delighted to invite all of you to join us from the 7th to the 9th of May 2025 in our host city, Edinburgh, Scotland. From John O'Groats to Loch Ness, from the Cairngorms to our royal family's Balmoral Castle, Scotland is home to fantastic natural landscapes, bustling, vibrant cities, and rich cultural heritage. Scotland showcases an incredible variety of exports: wave-powered generators, whisky, high-fashion tweeds, and globally famous steaks, all of which will add to what we hope will be a memorable experience for all of you. As we prepare for the 2025 annual conference, we look forward to working with the ICN steering group and co-chairs in the coming months to develop topics that will respond to new challenges and ensure that we continue to learn from one another, and to enable our collective enforcement of competition law to be as effective as possible. Some of you will remember that the UK was one of the ICN founding members back in 2001. As hosts, we're excited to celebrate all that ICN members have collectively achieved since then. We look forward to seeing you at the Edinburgh International Conference Centre next May.
I hope that whet everybody's appetite, and we really look forward to seeing you all next year. So, can't wait to see you. Thank you.